please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Kritika Saxena. Ashmit Kumar is joining in today from New Delhi. But the top story this evening, it's all about bank earnings this Friday evening. Worsening asset quality continues to remain a headache for State Bank of India as well as Bank of Baroda in the third quarter. SBI, the country's largest lender, reported a quarterly loss for the first time in at least 17 years. And that's not all. SBI also reported a more than 23,000 crore rupee divergence in gross bad loans for FY17. Lata Venkatesh is here to do the number crunching. Lata, what stands out as far as the asset quality worries are concerned from India's largest public sector banks?
Well, it's actually an all-round shocker for State Bank of India. It's reported a loss. That itself is a big shock, 2,400 crore. The slippages, that is the fresh bad loans, defaulters that you have created, is 25,000 crores. Now, last quarter was 10,000 crore. The quarter before it was 30,000 crores. We were told that all the bad news from all the subsidiaries is in, and that's why it's 30,000 crores. Then why 25,000 crores now? So the total gross NPA, gross bad loans, has jumped by 7% quarter on quarter. And the other bad news is that, you know, every year the regulator RBI oversees, supervises the books. And what they have found is that last year, according to RBI, 25,000 crore more of NPAs should have been declared, or rather 23,000 crores. So just all around bad news. Is this beaten by growth at least? No. Actually, the loan book has declined quarter on quarter. They've given fewer loans. So State Bank chairman tells us that all the bad news is out and we start a brave new year from FY19. That's the only positive from the results. In Bank of Baroda, it's not all-round bad, so I'll begin with the good news. It's a 40% growth in net interest income. Very good. Though, of course, it's not only because of loan growth. There have been other factors. Margins also are up. So the bank is making more money on every loan it gives, 2.7% versus 2.3% a year ago. The cost-to-income ratio is down, which means the amount of money they spend to create 100 rupee is come down to 39. It used to be 44 one quarter ago. That's a very good management of expenses. But the bad news is, again, the loans that have slipped into bad category have risen to 5,600 crores. And last quarter, it was only 3,400 crores. So if you thought things were peaking off, they are not. Bad news continues on the asset quality front for both banks.
Right, so worrying numbers, those slippages increasing for both those banks there, SBI as well as BOB. Now, the other big story that we are tracking this evening, in a bid to end SGX, Nifty and Sensex futures trading in Dubai, Indian exchanges have come together and issued a press release. Henceforth, they will not provide data on Indian indices to foreign exchanges. We caught up with the MD and CEO of NSE, that's Vikram Limai. Here's what he had to say on this development.
There has been a concern about liquidity moving to offshore jurisdictions, which is obviously not good for Indian markets. And therefore, I'd said this, I don't know when it was, maybe it was 10 days ago, that there are various options that are being considered to see how we can consolidate liquidity in India. So if you look at what we have outlined, is a series of things that will try and consolidate liquidity in Indian markets rather than fragmenting liquidity. Broadly, it has two components if you look at it. One is about licensing of indices that may be used for trading and settlement of offshore derivative contracts. So that would include our license with Singapore for the Nifty. That's one set of restrictions in terms of what exchanges are able to do. So therefore, we will have to terminate our license with SGX for the Nifty. What we don't want is other types of offshore derivative contracts, and that would also include the likes of single stock futures that was announced by Singapore, where the prices are obviously of Indian securities, and those prices are being obtained from Indian exchanges, but could be from multiple sources. So exchanges could give data to other data vendors who might provide it to exchanges, etc., etc. But whichever source is getting data from the exchange, what we are saying is that that data cannot be used for trading or settlement of any offshore derivative contract.
Okay, that was the MD and CEO of NSE making sense of that important move. All three exchanges coming together against the SGX Nifty. And this is something that we will, of course, take forward when the markets open on Monday. But let's take a quick look at how Indian equities fared today. It was yet another weekday for trade for the Lal State, marking an end to the worst week since August last year. So as you can see on your screens, the Nifty respected its earlier support of 10,400 and managed to end above that level. The Sensex closed just above that 35,000 mark. Bank Nifty, though, saw deep cuts of over 450 points, perhaps anticipating the bank earnings. Mid-caps were the star of today's session as index recovered more than 450 points to end in the green, and that pretty much has been the situation for the mid-cap index for the last few trading sessions. But let's shift gears now. The NITI Aayog has launched a National Health Index. This index ranks states based on various parameters to find out who are the best and worst performers, who has topped the list and who are the laggards. Ashmit is actually there with that list. Ashmit, take us through the fine print of that important list.
Well, in a major step towards improving healthcare data systems in the country, the NITI Aayog has launched the Health Index. Now, this index ranks states based on various parameters to find out which are the best performers and which are the worst performers as well. Let's start with the best ones. Well, Kerala, Punjab and Tamil Nadu, they make up the top three. Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh, those states complete the list of top 5 as the 5 most healthiest states in the country. The index also ranks smaller states separately, with Mizoram topping the list. The states such as Manipur, Meghalaya, Sikkim as well as Goa are in the top 5. Now, as far as the worst performers are concerned, well, they appear to be concentrated in northern India. The states of Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Bihar and Rajasthan, as well as Uttar Pradesh, are in the bottom of the pile. Now, let's talk of specifics on neonatal mortality, which is a measurement of infant deaths within 1 year of birth. Well, Kerala, Punjab and Tamil Nadu, they are the states which have done very well. In fact, they are the top 3 states. However, 35 out of 1,000 children born in the state of Odisha die within the first year itself. Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh are faring poorly as well. Now, on to the mortality rate. That's another key indicator. Within the first 5 years from childbirth, again, the states of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, southern states, as well as the state of Maharashtra coming in at number 3. But again, in the state of Madhya Pradesh, as well as in the state of Assam and as well as Odisha, 62 out of 1,000 children die before reaching the age of 6. Odisha, again, the worst performer here in this segment. Now on to infants with the low birth weight. Well, Telangana right on top, followed closely by J&K as well as by Andhra. They have rates of 5.7, 5.9, 6.7%. With respect to the worst performers, again, the Odisha featuring in this list again with 19, Rajasthan at 22.7 and Assam at 16.7. So that's clearly the situation as we have. Sex ratio, that's another key indicator that we need to keep in mind. Well, keep in mind that Kerala continues to be an outstanding performer. With respect to the sex ratio, has a sex ratio of 967 women per 1,000 men. That's, of course, the indication that being used. Chhattisgarh is a close second here, 961. West Bengal coming in at 951. As far as the worst performers are concerned, well, this is, again, a picture that we are seeing increasingly in the state of Haryana. Terrible pictures here. These numbers, keep in mind, just to put them in perspective, are even shy of the numbers that we see in the immediate neighborhood, and that's Pakistan, Afghanistan. They have better numbers than that. So again, that summarizes the health index as put out by the NITI Aayog.
Okay, thanks for taking us through that fine print, Ashmit. But let's take this further. Shireen Maan caught up with the CEO of NITI Aayog, Amitabh Kant, and started by asking him what this index tells us about the state of India's health.
Shireen, first of all, there's a huge amount of work to be done on primary health care. You know, there is a need to bring in good governance practices. You know, too many vacancies at district hospital level. Too much of work to be done at primary health care level. And what it really shows is that there is a need to lay all our attention, all our focus and all our energy on primary health care. And this is strictly the responsibility of the state governments.
So the primary healthcare system is well and truly broken.
It is. There's no doubt.
States.
There's no doubt about it, and that's why in this budget, one of the key announcements is that government needs to set up 1.5 lakh health and wellness centers. You know, you need to improve on infant mortality. We need to improve on maternal mortality. But more important than that is that 8 lakh people 8 crore people in India go down below the poverty line every year simply because the out-of-pocket expenses are very high.
Yeah.
So we need to take, and this is happening because we've not been able to structure a great primary healthcare scheme in some states, and we need to improve on that.
Okay, so let's talk about specifics now. And as I pointed out, Kerala on the top as far as the rankings are concerned, followed by Punjab, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh. The East, Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, Sikkim, the top performing small states, a lot of the eastern states making it to the rankings there. In terms of the worst performers, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Bihar, Rajasthan, UP, are you seeing any change, any improvement, even in the states that have traditionally been laggard states when it comes to healthcare, education, any other kind of social indicators?
So, Shireen, first and foremost, this is the first index of its kind in the world, which has ranked states on health performance. And and we've done two kinds of rankings. What you are talking about is a historical ranking. Historically, how do states perform? How have they performed? Now, states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Punjab have historically invested a lot in good practices on the health side. But we've also done a second ranking, and that is incremental ranking. It's very important, according to me, to create a base level of where the states are right now and how they're improving over a period of 1 year.
So who has improved over the year?
Capture that delta, capture that change. And that is important. It's very unfair to compare Kerala with, say, Bihar. But what we must compare is how they are performing over a period of 1 year. And if you do that incremental ranking, the most improved states, you find Jharkhand has done very well. You find Jammu and Kashmir has done very well. You find Punjab has done very well. And Uttar Pradesh has done very well. So Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir are the most improved states if you look at the delta, the change during the course of the year. And among smaller states, Mizoram is the most improved states. And amongst union territories, Lakshadweep is the most improved state. And now, having created that base level, every year we'll come out with this delta ranking of how change is taking.
The incremental change that's
how the
taking
change
place.
is taken.
But let me ask you this. Now, what does this index mean from a policy perspective? The last conversation that you and I had, you said that, we will name and shame states that don't perform when it comes to health. This, in a way, is your attempt at doing that. So what is it now going to mean in terms of policy prescription?
This is about naming and shaming. This is about saying that which states, we've also given tables here to show as to which states are coming down and which states are going up in different parameters. So for state health administrators, it's very easy to find out where they need to improve. But important thing is, as you said, that eventually performance must be directly correlated to funding. And one of the good things, this report is jointly done with the Health Ministry and the World Bank. And what the Health Ministry said is that, right now they have 10% of the total pool of money under the National Health Mission, which they give as incentive. They will take it up to 20%. And those which are the best performing states will get additional allocation. What we are trying to do is to correlate good performance, incremental good performance, with increased outlays. And that, I think, is a paradigm shift in India.
I want to now talk about specific issues. Let's take a look at the sex ratio. Number of girls per 1,000. Best, Kerala at 967, followed by Chhattisgarh at 961, West Bengal at 951. The worst, Haryana 831, Uttarakhand 844, Gujarat 854. So in terms of specifics, when it comes to infant mortality, when it comes to improving the sex ratio, what is the remedy? What is the answer now? And how is the NITI perhaps going to work with state governments to be able to design policies?
Two things. What comes out as a lesson out of the study is that there are huge variations amongst Indian states. And there is a huge need to work in partnership with the states. So what we did simultaneously, while we challenged the states in terms of performance, we also worked with them. We did series of workshops. We did about close to 7-8 workshops for every region, so that states could see what's happening in the neighboring states. The northern states must learn what is happening in the southern states. Why is Kerala and Tamil Nadu done well. The eastern part of India must know that. So there was a huge learning of experience.
Is it linked to budgetary allocation? I mean, and historically, as we've just discussed, Kerala has been an outperformer when it comes to social indicators, specifically health, education, etc. But what are some of these states where things are working, getting right?
Well, one is, first and foremost, there's a huge political and administrative commitment towards health. That's number one. Secondly, in their states, the primary healthcare is working beautifully. There are no vacancies of doctors. Doctors are not regularly transferred out. There's a huge care system at ground level, at zero level. I mean, that is broken down in certain other states. And that, you know, actually states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh have now hired doctors. So this study needs to be studied, needs to be read in the context of several other changes which the government is bringing in, because there's a huge shortage of doctors. And we are trying to, restructure the institutional mechanism of the Medical Council of India.
Where does the fate of the bill lie, sir?
It's with the Parliament.
Yeah, I know it's with Parliament, but it was expected to be taken up in the budget session.
It's gone before the committee, the parliamentary committee. So let them have a look. They had earlier made a very strong recommendation of the structural changes required. So I think that institutional reform will ensure that there's a larger flow of doctors available to the country. I mean, imagine what would have been the fate of this country if we had shortage of engineers. But today, engineers, you have almost 60 times more engineers than you have doctors. You've allowed free flow of engineers. We should have done the same with doctors. And once you have more doctors at the grassroots level, ensure excess supply of doctors, and that's important.
But what is the role of the primary healthcare and private sector, sir? I mean, this is a recommendation that the NITI Aayog has made in the past. It's generated a fair amount of controversy. But what is the role? For instance, there are these hybrid models the states of Rajasthan, etc., have experimented with in primary healthcare. Is there a role for the private sector?
So I'm a great believer, Shireen, that the primary healthcare is the responsibility of the government. I strongly believe that primary healthcare is where the government must step in with all its resources. That's its basic duty towards its citizens. The primary healthcare is truly the responsibility of taking care of its citizens. Secondary level is where the private sector steps in, and secondary level care. And to my mind, if we are able to take good care at the primary healthcare level, you will not have so much of an acute problem at the tertiary care level, where so many people are going below the poverty line. But at the tertiary care level, we should have different models of private-public partnership, but we should have these models in a transparent, competitive way. And what we feel is that the model that NITI Aayog is saying is that we've allowed free flow and free play of private sector in the tertiary care sector. Whereas in several of these areas, you need competition to come in. You need markets to be built. Let the market take care of it.
Is the idea then, through the insurance scheme that has been announced in the budget, to really get whether it's the medical profession or the insurance sector, is that the government's way of, in a sense, regulating these sectors? So
it's, first of all, it's not an insurance scheme, it's an assurance scheme. It's important to make a distinction between...
it was announced as an insurance scheme.
It's almost like an assurance where the government says that we will provide you benefit up to 5 lakh rupees for 10 crore families and 50 crore individuals, which works out to about roughly 50 crore citizens. So up to 5 lakh means that citizens will have now there are different models available. I mean, the 24 states in India, we've looked at experience across countries, where what kind of schemes have done well. We've studied all that Indian states have done. 24 states have done it, and out of these, the best performing one is the one in Rajasthan, where they provide assistance up to 3.5 lakhs, and they support them. The premium is about roughly 500 rupees, but it's directly linked to Aadhaar of the family, and it's a very well structured, very thought through scheme. So I think we've learned, we've done a lot of learning out of international good practices and domestic practices, and we'll take them forward as we go along.
Is this index going to be used in any form or fashion while you try and develop the partnership model that you intend to take forward?
But this is more to tell the states how they perform. This is more to make good governance as good politics. This is about what Prime Minister has talked about repeatedly. This is about cooperative and competitive federalism. I mean, my own experience from ease of doing business really showed that first year Gujarat came #1, but the very next year Telangana and Andhra did beat Gujarat, and Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh did very well. So my expectation is that once we put this in public domain, we will see a huge amount of competition in states, and I will not be surprised if next year Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar all take on the challenge of beating Kerala and Tamil Nadu. That's #1. #2, what we are doing next year is to work in very close partnership with the states which have not done well, so as to ensure that they catch up with the rest of India. So NITI Aayog will do a series of hand-holding, it will act as a catalyst. And thirdly, I think very important, and this is the key, rank all our district hospitals. So we'll be ranking close to about the health of our hospitals is our next ranking. We'll be ranking 730 hospitals, and that will bring out which states, how many hospitals are not performing well.
Amitabh Kant there in conversation with Shireen Bhan. Now, staying with the subject, we caught up with the Health Minister of Kerala, K.K. Shailaja Teacher, and she told us about the efforts that the state has been undertaking to ensure a balanced sex ratio. Take a look.
In Kerala, we have a very good propaganda on these kind of things, and this fundamentalism, etc. We are fighting against that, and people are aware. And here there is no son preference like other parts of India. And also our health department also is trying to make it that people should think the son preference is not a good thing, not good practice. And throughout these years we are working for that. And I think that is why on the part of sex ratio also Kerala is in the forefront.
Well, late last night, Malvinder and Shavinder Singh informed the exchanges that they have resigned from the board of Fortis Healthcare. But the story doesn't end. In fact, it began to unravel this morning. Now there are reports emerging that allege that the Singh brothers had taken at least $78 million from the company without the approval of the board. In fact, reports also suggest that auditor Deloitte has refused to sign off on Q2 earnings of Fortis Healthcare due to this. However, Fortis has denied these allegations. The company in a statement has said that these funds have been deployed in secured short-term investments with companies in normal treasury operations. Fortis has also denied the allegations that auditors have refused to sign accounts for the second quarter. Last evening, in fact, when Singh brothers announced their resignation from Fortis Health, their statement said, and I quote, "It is intended to free the organization from any encumbrances whatsoever that may be linked with the promoters." However, despite these developments, Fortis Healthcare rocketed in trade today. The stock soared after a CNBC TV18 exclusive report that Manipal Health, backed by TPG Capital, is in advanced talks to acquire Fortis Healthcare. Shifting focus from Fortis to its promoters, Malvinder and Shavinder Singh, well, they are facing several problems at the moment. The Singh brothers sold Ranbaxy to Daiichi in 2008. The Japanese firm later accused the Singhs of concealing information on wrongdoings by the then Ranbaxy. The Singhs lost that case to Daiichi. And also, what's important is that they have lost that case at the Delhi High Court. They've been directed to pay that arbitral award of 3,500 crore rupees. Singh brothers expectedly have moved the Supreme Court in appeal. But that's not all. A US-based PE firm has accused the Singhs of siphoning off funds. Now, that is a case, again, that is pending before the Delhi High Court. That's due to come up in the month of March, only days away now. Some stern questions that need answering as of this stage. To help us understand, well, what on the face of it are prima facie looks like anomalies, and to assess and to understand Fortis's statement in response to these questions, we have with us Mr. J.N. Gupta, former ED of SEBI. We also have with us Mr. Vishesh Chandiok. He's partner with Grant Thornton, and Mr. Amit Tandon, MD with IIAS. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. First up to you, Mr. J.N. Gupta. The response that Fortis has put across is that this was a secured, not a particular, but a series of secured short-term investments with companies in the course of regular treasury operations. You've been in the industry long enough. You've seen a number of these transactions take place in the past. What is your understanding when you see money being put off as loans and advances, money that was lying on the company's balance sheet as cash and cash equivalents, that then sent off in the form of loans and advances to related parties? Does that raise questions of the regulator? Does that raise questions of perhaps compliance with the Companies Act?
So you have to look the response of the company holistically, and then you will find the loopholes. They say that it is a normal treasury operation and the companies were not related party when it was given. They became related party later, and the audit is in process. There is no refusal by Deloitte, but it is still in process. Now let us break into parts. When I give money to the company, I know which company it is there, and the company became related party not by act of God. It would have become a process which you have initiated. So if you say that it was not known to the promoter, not known to the company, that it is a part of the, going to be part of the related party, I would not agree. Secondly, the September results, if you say that they are still work in process, if a 3-month operation needs 5 months to audit, then I don't think any company would be able to give you audited results. So the issue very clearly here is this, that as we have been seeing in past, and we continue to see, despite all the rounds, most of the promoters of the Indian company operates not as a public limited company, but as a personal limited company, where whatever they want to do, they carry on doing it. The unfortunate part is this, that our legal system is such that we are never able to bring it to the logical conclusion.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So there are a number of anomalies here, as Mr. Jain Gupta is pointing out. Mr. Chandiok, if I may come to you, related party transactions clearly governed by the Indian Companies Act. Section 185 has very detailed pointers as to how such loans and advances are to be treated. Are we looking at perhaps a possible violation of the Companies Act? We're not privy to the details of those related party transactions. Were they at arm's length? Those questions are being raised. Are we looking at perhaps possible violations of the Companies Act? Or are our fears perhaps premature at this stage?
I think clearly nobody knows the facts at this stage other than the facts that are out in the public domain, which the companies put out in the public domain. And according to the facts that are out in the public domain, it seems to be, not a case of Section 185, which is a loan to an entity where the directors are interested, or to the directors themselves. Of course, the second part of that transaction is that in the subsequent quarter, because of some transactions that happened, those entities ended up becoming related parties, and therefore, at that stage would require the approval of the board. And I understand the board meeting's coming up on the 13th of February, and one would expect to see both the quarter's financials being signed off by the auditors to issue a limited report on that, and for the board to approve the transaction. So it's a few days out. We should wait and watch.
Fair enough. Mr. Tandon, if I may bring you in, again, at this point, they have come out with a statement, and what they have claimed at least is that these were again secured short-term investments in companies as a part of regular treasury operations. The questions being raised are, very key details are missing from this release. Number one, the first question being, were these transactions approved by the board? Also, were these transactions at arm's length? Again, questions that are fundamental when one is looking at RPTs or related party transactions. Just your assessment of this response from Fortis minus these key details.
Look, very clearly, there are fairly serious charges against the company, and their response doesn't do anything to add to the comfort, but actually raises more questions at this stage. And Mr. Gupta, who's kind of speaking about it before me, kind of pointed out in the direction of the fact that what are the gaps in terms of what the company should have said. I think the other, if you've got cash, usually my understanding is, and we've got Mr. Chandyok here who will be able to throw light on it. Once you've kind of given it out as intercorporate borrowing, it doesn't actually remain in your books as cash, but it becomes short-term advance, and those should be treated completely differently. So I'm kind of a little bit curious how they have gone ahead, and given the fact that at one stage they said it's cash and cash balance with the company, but suddenly they're turning around and saying, hey, it's not cash and cash balance actually. It is cash and cash balances, but it's also not cash and cash balance. I guess what happens is in your opening comment, you did talk about the fact that with Malvinder and Shivinder Singh, there have been a series of events, and that is actually what I would say is that those are a series of dots, and if you connect the dots, then there's a pattern which seems to emerge. But having said so, let's say that there are some...
Is there any comfort, Mr. Tandon, if I may come in? Is there any comfort from the fact that the press release...
Sorry?
Is there any comfort, Mr. Tandon, that one can derive perhaps from the assurance that the company seems to have given that the loans of 473 crores will be paid back by the end of Q1 FY 18-19? Is that any consolation? Does that in any manner of speaking perhaps address these fears that have been raised?
Well, my view is cash is king. Anything else is kind of just a promise. So therefore, it's a promise that money will come back, but who's to say whether it will or it won't? Shareholders value cash, and that is what should be the area of focus.
Right. Mr. Chandyok, we're running out of time. I'll come back to you for a quick comment. The next big question, of course, has been the role of the auditor. Mr. J.N. Gupta earlier pointed out that for a set of results, if it takes more than 5 months for an auditor to clear them, clearly there are worries. Perhaps that's perhaps an alarm bells should set off if that were to happen. Concerns galore there. Do you also have a similar position that perhaps results that have still not been audited are pointing at perhaps some red flags that Deloitte might have raised?
It's obviously an unusual situation. Normally, one's supposed to file the audited limited review results within 45 days of the end of the quarter and within 60 days of the end of the year. And obviously, if that doesn't happen, then it's an unusual situation. But the company's responded that the company was busy with, pretty significant transactions in December, because of which it could not. Of course, from an auditor's perspective, an auditor looks for sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support the opinion they're issuing. And until the time the auditor can, gather that sufficient appropriate audit evidence, they can't issue that opinion. They have the ability technically to say that, I'm unable to issue an opinion or issue a disclaimer of an opinion, but that's, almost unheard of to happen. And one would only take that step after exhausting all the other steps.
Fair enough.
And
Mr. Jain,
as I said at the beginning,
you for the final comment.
There's a board.
Go ahead, Mr. Chandyok.
Hello.
No, I was just saying, I think we should wait for another 4 days. There's a board meeting in 4 days' time. I understand there's both the Q2 as well as Q3 results and auditor's report that's supposed to be presented. We will know that in 3 days' time.
Fair enough. Mr. Gupta, to you for the final comment. These fears that have been raised about siphoning off, they have been in the public domain for some time by way of Daiichi applications that have consistently made similar prayers, have expressed similar fears in the Delhi High Court. We saw another application by a PE investor raise again similar questions. Now, in response to all of these fears, this report is coming out, this response has come out from Fortis. We have the two brothers parting ways, seeking to shelter their company and the commercial interests from whatever their personal issues might have been. The stock market seems to have responded favorably. The stocks did go up. How are you looking at it? This gesture of distancing oneself, of resigning, does this, in a manner of speaking, perhaps address the corporate governance issues that have come to light?
See, unfortunately, I will not be as kind as Mr. Chandyok is, because I am not known for that kindness. But I would say very simply that after Delhi High Court decision and having taken whatever money they wanted to take out from Fortis, when there is nothing left to take out, they have said, okay, we are walking off. The issue that is very important is, what has been the role of independent directors, auditors, and audit committee members. Now, it is very difficult for me to say that audit committee members did not know that this money has gone and what type of question they raised. And secondly, if the money has been siphoned off as had been claimed, then it is some sort of a criminal act, and maybe it is a fraud that is played on the shareholder, then auditors are duty bound to report the fraud. I really do not know what is the situation today, but I certainly cannot accept that audit will take for 5 months to complete for a quarter, and something is wrong somewhere.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen. Mr. Gupta, Chandiok, Mr. Tandon, thank you so much for joining us.
Ashmit, thanks very much for taking us through that interesting discussion. And this is a story which will be developing over the course of the days as the details emerge. So this is something that we will track over the next week. But for now, let's take a very, very short break. On the other side, another special discussion on the rural demand. We speak to Suresh Narayanan of Nestle India and Hemant Malik of ITC Food Business. We will also have on the show Mohit Anand of Kellogg India and Nitin Puri of Yes Bank. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's budget 2018 was majorly focused on agriculture, rural sector and food processing industry. Ronojoy Banerjee caught up with some of the top players of the packaged food industry and he asked them about the additional budgetary allocation to food processing, demand revival in rural areas and the import duty hike on certain food items. Here's a slice of that interview.
Mr. Narayan, let me first get your thoughts on the budget overall. Big focus, big rural push. Will that be enough to revive the sentiments and the demand?
Look, I can only say that the budget very clearly is a pragmatic budget. It has addressed one of the core distressed sectors of the economy, which is agriculture. Anything that we do in agriculture, be it in pricing, be it in inputs, be it in upstream, will certainly benefit not only the agrarian sector, but will also benefit the food processing sector. So I see this as and also incidentally, the food processing investments have been doubled from 700 odd crores to about 1400 crores. So clearly the steps are being taken in order to mitigate the situation in the agrarian economy. This seen together with an increased focus on some aspects of food processing, whether it is Project Green or whether it is increased investments, MSPs, etc., etc. All this is definitely going to help the industry. Now the question is, these things are not a one-year finite horizon. Right. These would evolve over a period of time. So one hopes that this transcends into a longer, more stable set of practices that can actually benefit the agrarian economy and indeed the larger food processing industry. Okay, let's get Kellogg and also in this conversation, because this government's big focus has been on the food processing sector. As Ms. Narayan also mentioned, allocation has gone up twofold. But is that enough, considering the fact that rural incomes have been stagnant for the last 4 years, that the economic survey has also brought out, and that directly impacts all of us? Your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
I think enough is never enough, but I think it's in the right direction. 700 to 1400 crores is a big jump. I think that will help. I think the government is making the right moves to ensure that the food processing industry, which touches pretty much the agrarian industry in a big way and farmer income in a big way, it is going to help. Can we do more? Always. Can we do more with ourselves or with the government? Always. But I think it's directionally, like Suresh said, it's a balanced budget and it's moving in the right direction.
Let me get you, Mr. Malik, on the big elephant in the room as far as the budget is concerned, the hike in import duties on several items, especially many of the juices. The thinking was that this will aid Make in India. Can this do Make in India? Because many are wondering, do we even produce those kind of juices in India? Do we even have the capabilities to do that at this point?
I think Make in India is very important for India, for our economy, for our people. And anything that supports Make in India, we are all for it. specifically to the increase in import duty for juice, which comes in the form of a concentrate. I think the increase in duty will end, because all these fruits are grown in India. There are oranges, there are apple, there is pineapple, which is grown. We need to, this will allow to support and in fact we will start using not from concentrate juice, which is way better than using the concentrated juice which typically gets imported. As ITC, we have been, we have a brand called Be Natural. We've been in the market for the last couple of years, and we are moving our entire portfolio from to not from concentrate juices, which will come in from the local farmer. It requires a lot of work because there is a technology adapting to the Indian produce, but I think that has to be done, and I think it's a great initiative.
Yeah, so net-net, then you support the government's strategic direction and thinking that this is going to help make in India. So in that sense, ITC supports it.
Absolutely.
All right. Since Nitin, you're the numbers guy, and you do the research in this sector. Many are saying on this panel also 700 to 1400 crores is actually a big jump. But if you look at the allocation for the Sampada scheme, which was what, 6,000 odd crore rupees. So realistically, have higher funds been allocated, or is this just some sort of a mirage?
We've definitely seen a very big offtake. So 6,000 crores, which is less than about $1 billion distributed over 3 to 4 years. And this is just a small little contribution in the form of a grant that's coming from the government. There is a 5x multiplier factor on this in terms of the actual investment is coming in because the promoters bring in their money. And there's a larger spin-off effect in terms of maybe a 5x or a 10x in terms of the entire value chain developing. A lot of wastages getting reduced and a lot of improvement in farmers' income as a result of this. About 112 cold chain projects have been approved by the ministry in the last 2 years. In the last 10 years, 100 projects had been approved. So you can imagine what was earlier done in 10 years has actually been done in 2 years, and for the next 2 years they have a target to quadruple it. Right. So in terms of the impact it can make, and it is making, it's in fact very tangible.
Well, so clearly the food processing industry giving the budget a thumbs up. With that, it's time now for a very short break, but coming up.
It is owed to that judge and his family that the investigation should be done properly and effectively.
Over 100 opposition MPs write to the president demanding a probe into the death of Judge Loya. Details on the other side.
Back, you're still with India Business Hour Plus. Now let's get you the big national headline of the day. Over 100 opposition MPs have written to the President of India, Ramnath Kovind, seeking a probe into the death of Judge Loya. Now, the opposition wants the probe to be conducted by a Supreme Court-monitored SIT, or a Special Investigative Team, Special Intelligence Team, sorry. In fact, a delegation of opposition leaders, led by Congress President Rahul Gandhi, also met the President to raise this very issue.
Large numbers of MPs, both in the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, 114 of them felt a sense of discomfort. They felt that a judge of the High Court has died, district court has, special CBI, has died under suspicious circumstances. And it is owed to that judge and his family that the investigation should be done properly and effectively. This feeling was expressed to us by different parties and by large numbers of members of parliament. So we decided to take this feeling and give it to the president.
Well, the Judge Loya case is not the only political hot potato. The war of words, in fact, between the BJP and the Congress over disclosure of price of the Rafale deals is only escalating. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley told the Lok Sabha yesterday that even UPA government didn't reveal details of defence deals. Congress President Rahul Gandhi has called this statement a lie. In a tweet addressing the Finance Minister, Rahul Gandhi posted 3 written answers given by former Defence Minister A.K. Anthony to the Parliament. The responses detailed acquisition costs of 42 Sukhois, 30 MKI, aircraft upgradation cost of Mirage 2000, and acquisition cost of Admiral Gorshkov, which is now called the INS Vikramaditya. Rahul further continued with his demand, urging the Defence Minister to reveal the cost of Rafale jets. Clearly, we are yet to hear the last of this case and the last of these exchanges between the two sides. But that's all we have time for in this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.